Most people love the idea of renewable energy to decarbonize the electricity system, but many are not aware of the grid integration impacts of these variable generation technologies. But what exactly is variability? Wind and solar PV are variable renewable energy generators. The wind isn't always blowing and the sun isn't always shining, meaning these are non-dispatchable generators. We can't control Mother Nature and therefore can't control their output. Not only can we not control them, but their generation output can change quickly, just like the weather, and therefore the rest of the power system must be able to fill in the blanks every second so that no outages occur. We need reliable supply options, but how? We need supply reliability, which means dispatchable generation to meet demand not fulfilled by variable generators. In our power system, we have different types of generators that serve different purposes. Baseload power is the unvarying generation which occurs the majority of the time. These have low operating costs and like to run at a steady output, such as nuclear or coal-fired plants. Peaking plants, typically natural gas-fired peakers, are expensive to run but able to respond quickly to system demand. Intermediate load-following plants tend to fall in between baseload and peakers, such as combined cycle gas turbines. Hydro plants are unique and can serve as baseload, load-following, and even peaking units depending on the available resource. Both intermediate and peaking plants respond to changes in variable renewable generation. So we know that we need reliable, dispatchable, installed capacity to deal with all of this variability, but how do we look at this? Well, we can look at the load duration curve, which shows the relationship between generating capacity requirements and capacity utilization. Our top curve shows the load duration curve, and the lower curve shows the residual load duration curve, where variable output is treated as a negative load. We can see that to the left of the curve is where peak load generation saved by variables is shown. Typically, we see that very little peak load generation is saved, showing that VRE can't help to meet peak demand and therefore doesn't reduce the amount of installed dispatchable generation required. While you can see greater savings in intermediate and baseload energy, this also means that baseload and intermediate generators have reduced load hours, reducing low-cost generation. On the curve to the left, you can see overproduction stemming from excess supply that either must be curtailed or sold if possible. This can often create negative market prices due to a host of reasons, including conventional plants that can't reduce output, a surplus of energy, and limited ability to balance supply across larger geographical areas, such as trade from BC into the States or Alberta. Though negative prices might seem good to the consumer, they show instability in the market. All of this shows that we need greater flexibility in our power system if we plan to decarbonize through the integration of renewables. Looking at this figure from the National Renewable Energy Lab, it shows some flexibility impacts due to variables, in this case wind generation. Here we can see steeper ramps and turndowns, which is the rate of increase or decrease in dispatchable generation to follow changes in demand and VRE generation. We also see shorter peaks resulting in fewer operating hours for conventional plants. So all of this leaves the question, how do we keep the lights on? Well, there's no one solution, and every power system will have different ways of dealing with variability. This figure from NREL shows the relative economics of integration options. A commonly cited way of dealing with all of this variability is to keep it in storage until we need it. But here we can see that chemical storage, such as the Powerwall, faces high cost barriers as well as storage size barriers. We can try to manage our load via demand response, but this can be expensive and is already maxed out in many places. Some of this variability can be smoothed by transmission expansion to trade between geographical regions when we have over or under generation. We now know that we need low carbon intensive dispatchable generation, but resources differ greatly between regions. We're lucky in BC to have great hydro resources, but this isn't possible in most places, just like Iceland is lucky to have great geothermal resources. Carbon capture and storage could be implemented on coal or natural gas plants, but is not economically feasible under current conditions. Nuclear can provide clean baseload power, and newer nuclear plants even have ramping capabilities, but would anyone agree to a nuclear plant in their backyard? There are many options to help us integrate renewables into the grid, but this often leaves us with more questions than answers. This shows the need for continued research and informed discussions to address these questions. Research centers like the Institute for Integrated Energy Systems at UVic participate in much of this work with their mission to chart feasible paths to sustainable future systems. It is clear that the first step in the solution is to help consumers and decision makers understand integration challenges so we can all have a meaningful contribution to this discussion.